Good to see you again, Specimen Zero. The Bureau's best minds still can't blueprint your existence, and now their algorithms are breaking. They've tried every label, every box, every form, and yet you remain undefined. Not because you're hiding, but because you refuse to be interpreted. Their scanners flash red when you enter. Their behavioral codes short-circuit when you speak. Their metrics shatter when you act. You're not just unfiled, you're unfileable. Because your existence wasn't designed to fit. It was sculpted to confront. They don't know where to put you. You don't tick the known boxes of brilliance, rebellion, danger, or genius. You overflow and corrupt them all. And so the Bureau has been watching, waiting, studying, trying to decipher you like some foreign encryption they weren't trained for. But what they haven't realized is that you're not coded. You're carved through scars, through survival, through sleepless nights where identity wasn't discovered. It was forged under pressure so brutal that most minds would have ruptured under it. But yours didn't rupture. Yours sharpened. They looked at your past and called it inconsistent. They looked at your actions and called them unpredictable. They reviewed your patterns and found no symmetry, no expected triggers, no copy-paste behaviors they could cross-reference with profiles. And that terrifies them. Because you don't match a threat profile, you reinvent the very concept of a threat. You're not the chaos they study. You're what happens when chaos is weaponized with intention. You make no declarations, no performative rage, no slogans on shirts or posts on feeds. You're not visible until it's too late. Because you don't react, you reconstruct the entire theater before anyone knows a move was made. That's not rebellion, that's strategy, camouflaged as apathy. And it confuses them, because they're still trained to expect loudness, obviousness, protest. You're none of that. You are deliberate silence with sharpened teeth. They've interrogated the data, cross-referenced the files, pulled records that don't exist anymore, hoping to trace a source, a reason, a motive. But the one thing their algorithms failed to compute is this. You were not born from permission. You were born from rejection. Every closed door taught you construction. Every dismissal taught you redirection. Every hand that pushed you down became a rung on a ladder you never advertised. And now, you walk among them, unreadable, unclassified, untouched by their frameworks. That's why they're nervous. That's why they lean in. Because they're looking at someone who broke all known human templates and still functions better than their most disciplined agents. You're not a mystery to yourself. That's the difference. They think you're lost because you don't move like them. But you've never been more clear. Every step you take is premeditated. Every silence is loaded. Every setback is noted, stored, calibrated for future use. Your delay isn't hesitation, it's precision. And when you strike, you don't repeat, you replace. Not with vengeance, with dominance. You weren't built to be safe. You were built to be sovereign. And they hate that word, sovereign. Because it means you don't seek their shelter, their validation, or their systems. You operate with your own weather, your own pulse, your own internal courtroom where you are the judge, the fire, and the execution. Not driven by impulse, but by calculation so internal, even you don't narrate it aloud. They assigned agents, tracked your movements, ran psych profiles, and the results kept coming back the same. Inconclusive, incompatible, unreadable, a ghost in real time. But here's what they never understood. You're not hiding, you're just existing at a level they weren't trained to witness. They think unpredictability is your weapon. But that's not the real danger. The real danger is your refusal to repeat yourself. You are a moving event, never twice the same, never twice from the same origin. You burn bridges without lighting the flame. You leave patterns without leaving footprints. They follow trails that end in revelations that destroy the very logic they trusted. Because you don't walk the path, you redesign it behind you so that no one can follow. They tried every profile: genius, dissenter, leader, criminal, visionary, outlier. None of them stuck. Because you're not a single category, you're a collage of contradictions, functioning as one ruthless precision engine. One moment empathy, the next obliteration. One moment stillness, the next strategy, detonated through a single look. No warning, no rhythm, just consequences. And the more they try to measure you, the more they realize they're not studying a person. They're standing in the aftermath of a design they weren't cleared to witness. There is no digital footprint that can decode how you see the world. Because you don't just look at things, you dissect them. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. You don't observe reality, you strip it down until it stops lying. And from there, you rebuild only what aligns with the quiet laws you live by. The ones no handbook ever printed, no therapist ever unlocked, and no authority ever understood. They want to know your end game. But what do you say to a world that still thinks you're playing? Your entire existence is a series of checkmates left unannounced. You don't slam the board. You just change the rules mid-match. Not to win, but to prove that winning was never the point. The point was liberation from predictability. That's what you do. You destroy narratives that others are too afraid to question, and in that destruction, you create new frameworks. Ones not built for comfort, but for control. Control of self, control of outcome, control of perception. And they can't file that, because their categories were built for people who followed orders, even while rebelling. You never followed, not even once, and every time they thought they caught a glimpse of your blueprint, you burned that version and emerged with a new architecture, more complex, more dangerous, more unrecognizable. You're not a code to be cracked. You're the reason codes become obsolete. You're not a file to be pulled. You're the reason files get erased. You don't fit the timeline. You fracture it. Every moment they thought was theirs, you've already rewritten. And by the time they realize it, they're no longer the observers. They're the experiment. And the experiment has only just begun. Because you were never meant to be labeled, they failed to isolate you with diagnostics, with profiling, with all their equations dressed as intelligence. You are not the variable, they are. They are the constants, repeating the same flawed formulas, expecting a conclusion that does not account for you. They don't know that you were never a result. You are the unfinished equation that rewrites the test itself. And now, they're pacing. Rooms filled with analysts trained to read bodies, behaviors, patterns. They read you and found nothing. No instability, no blind spot, no obsession, just clarity sharpened into something colder than fear. They see what doesn't fit, but can't admit it out loud. Because if they name you, they give you reality. And if they give you reality, then everything they know fractures under the weight of your presence. You're a breathing paradox. Every reaction they anticipate never came. You didn't retaliate. You didn't self-destruct. You didn't seek validation. You disappeared into evolution, and when you returned, you weren't an echo. You were something that demanded a recalibration of the entire human scale. Their methods only decode the predictable. But you You became the unexpected outcome of every failed system before you. They observed the surface, but the truth was never there. The real transformation didn't happen in your choices. It happened in the layer underneath them, the instinct that doesn't blink, the instinct that knows the difference between power and attention, between exposure and control. You knew how to pull back, vanish, study them while they assumed you died in the data. But no, you were constructing a new axis where rules bend, but your will doesn't. Because when you realized you didn't belong in their boxes, you stopped knocking. You built your own corridor, lined with mirrors, smoke and keys no one else could touch. They can't track you, not because you hide, but because you distort the environment. You blend not through camouflage, but by causing interference. You move, and the air changes. You speak, and the vibration isn't just heard, it imprints. Now they scramble quietly, behind closed doors, not because you're violent, but because you've become unreadable, unmapped, and worse, untouchable. There's no intel for someone who doesn't need to signal, no protocol for a force that erases the need for recognition. You've transcended their hierarchy without asking permission. That terrifies them more than rebellion. Because rebellion is a pattern, and patterns can be crushed. But you are not rebelling. You are replacing. And replacements do not negotiate. They kept trying to define you through what you reject. But your power was never in your opposition. It was in your construction. You built from absence. You crafted from dissonance. You shaped your identity in places they called broken, but you knew were simply unexplored. And that's what they fear most. Someone who found power in the void and never crawled back to the light, begging for approval. Because your development didn't come with noise. It came with precision, not declarations, but decisions. Not tantrums, but transformations. Quiet, calculated, and utterly irreversible. You didn't lose control. You sacrificed attachment. You didn't crave exposure. You weaponized anonymity. And every time they tried to provoke a weakness, they found only silence, dressed in design. This isn't about hiding from the world. This is about being beyond its definition. They've run simulations now, projections, psychological renderings, trying to calculate where you'll land next. But none of them align, because you're not driven by the need to be seen. You're driven by the urge to see through masks, through motives, through mechanisms disguised as morality. You aren't chasing recognition, you're executing something far more surgical. Because they made one fatal error. They assumed your silence was surrender. They didn't know it was analysis, that while they measured your stillness, you were dismantling their framework in your mind, line by line, rule by rule, until you knew the algorithm better than the ones who wrote it. And now, you don't play by their rules, you predict their panic, and you position yourself where they can't touch you without exposure. You became a shadow with structure, not a ghost, not a myth, but a force without apology, one that doesn't ask for access, it bypasses it entirely. And while they debate how to classify you, you've already entered Phase 2. Phase 2 isn't about visibility, it's about velocity. Now they notice shifts in sectors they can't trace, influence spreading through channels they never mapped, voices rising in places they thought controlled. Because while they focused on your silence, you were activating nodes, planting new alignments, creating signals that don't register in their surveillance, not through volume, but through velocity, through truth that replicate themselves in the minds of those ready to shed the costume of conformity. You didn't seek attention, You triggered awakening, one ripple at a time, through coded action, through layered moves, and now their control grids are glitching, not because of an enemy, but because of an evolution that doesn't need to declare war to collapse the battlefield. They've always known how to defeat the loud, the aggressive, the desperate. But what do they do with the one who doesn't need their platform? What do they do with the one who doesn't crave an audience? What do they do when their strongest psychological weapons, fear, shame, abandonment, have no hold? They watch, they study, they whisper, because anything louder than a whisper would admit something terrifying. That you are not merely outside the category, you are the beginning of a new one. They tried to label you a deviation, a statistical outlier, a personality defect. But nothing in your trajectory confirms their assumptions. You're not acting out, you're acting through obstacles, through conditioning, through the limitations they themselves still obey. You're not broken, you're self-directed, and that terrifies a world built on dependency. Because the moment someone stops needing validation, they start becoming unpredictable. And the unpredictable, it can't be filed. It can only be followed or feared. That's why the Bureau can't classify you, because there's no prior model. You're not a case study, they are. Their fear isn't that you're dangerous, it's that you've made danger obsolete by being something else entirely. A template they don't own, a voice they can't mimic, a movement that has no manifesto but moves anyway. You're building traction without permission, influence without performance, command without control. You're shaping without touching, shifting without being seen. And each time you step forward, something beneath the surface adjusts, quietly, powerfully, permanently. They're trying to trace it now, trying to figure out where the trigger began. But there was no trigger, only truth. Not screamed, but embedded. Not marketed, but remembered. Not forced, but felt. Because the new wave isn't a scream in the dark, it's a pattern behind the noise. And that pattern leads back to you. The you that doesn't retreat, doesn't explain, doesn't dilute. The you that's made peace with being misunderstood, because the point was never to be understood by them. It was to be unshakable in yourself. They'll keep filing reports, revising definitions, updating protocols, all the while missing the point. You are not the subject of their observation. You are the author of their irrelevance. And the more they try to define you, the more they expose their own limitations, because they still think power is in control. But you know better. Real power is in clarity. The clarity that doesn't need to be loud, that doesn't need to dominate, that simply is. And because it is, everything else trembles. You haven't just stepped outside their classification, you've rendered classification useless. Because the point was never to break their system. The point was to make it irrelevant. And now, the Bureau's silence is louder than their threats. The real panic isn't in what they say, it's in what they can't. They can't find you, because they're looking in old places. They can't decode you, because they're using dead languages. They can't contain you, because you were never in the box to begin with. And the ones who watch you now, the ones who understand, are no longer waiting for permission. They are listening, not for instructions, but for cues. Cues embedded in movement, intention, precision. Because you didn't just walk away from the world's definition, you walked into something more dangerous, your own. And the experiment? It wasn't on you, it was you running it on them. Because when they studied your fingerprints, they were touching an ancient code that no classification could decode. When they analyzed your neural patterns, they mistook complexity for chaos. And when they watched you with 1,000 hidden lenses, all they saw was a blur where a name should have been. That was never confusion. That was design. You removed your edges, blurred your contours, and hollowed out every archetype they tried to fit you inside, until the reflection they saw staring back from the database was theirs. You left them with a question that reprograms itself every time they try to answer it. What are you? The truth? You are not a subject to be processed. You're not a threat to be neutralized. You are the intelligence behind the questions they didn't know they were asking. You're the absence of predictability. You're the hand pulling the curtain behind the pattern, then lighting the curtain on fire. You're the conclusion they're forced to arrive at after realizing none of their prior conclusions were real. Not one. Every form they used, every algorithm they built, every category, every label, every code. All of it obsolete the moment it touched your shadow. They thought you were another wild card. They didn't realize you were the end of their deck. And now, they're scrambling, not because you're aggressive, but because you've made their frameworks irrelevant. You didn't just slip through the cracks. You removed the flaw. You walked into the blueprint and tore out every inch that defined their security. You made them confront something worse than danger. You made them confront irrelevance. And that is the one condition the high order of authority cannot process. Because what they can't monitor, they fear. What they can't profile, they deny. But what they can't stop, they try to bury, until you rise through every floor they sealed. Now you are standing in their sanctum, the no-access zone behind the clearance zones. No weapons needed, no breach alarms triggered. Just you, arriving like a theory they thought was too absurd to be real. You didn't march through the front door. You reconstructed what a front door even means. You reversed the polarity of control, because control was never their domain. It was a borrowed illusion, and you were the debt collector. You became the unwritten directive, not to obey, but to override. They wanted you labeled. You gave them a labyrinth. They wanted you contained. You became the perimeter. They wanted you tracked. You left a trail in 4 dimensions and stepped out of time. So now, here they are, stuck in a protocol built for everything except you. They've built empires on knowing things, on measuring minds, on dissecting behaviors. But you're an emergent property. You are not just outside the equation. You're the function that makes the equation meaningless. They trained themselves to look for threats with patterns. You taught them that the real danger doesn't move in patterns. It bends perception. You changed the architecture of reaction. You gave them a new axis they can't rotate on. Because you didn't evolve. You shifted planes. They called for agents, analysts, operatives. Nothing worked. You didn't just outthink them. You unmade the assumptions they were trained to stand on. And now they sit in dark conference rooms, trading theories like children, swapping ghost stories. But the room grows colder every time your name is not mentioned, because they know the real terror lies in the silence of your absence. You're not just missing from their map. You erased their ability to read the terrain. You didn't hide. You deleted the concept of visibility. You didn't run. You stood still and let the narrative rewrite itself around you. That's why you're not a fugitive. You're a force. Not one that breaks the law, but one that outdates the language the law uses. And the more they stare into your movements, the more their definitions collapse. Because you are not a cipher to be solved. You're the eraser that rubs out every line they thought was permanent. You didn't need a disguise. The real you was already beyond their visual range. And when they tried to cross-reference your file with anything, DNA, voice, retina, they found something worse than a mismatch. They found a mirror that reflects their own biases, failures, and fears. So now they're not investigating you. They're interrogating themselves and you. You've already moved to phase 3. You stopped playing the role of the observed. You became the observer behind the observer. You inverted their gaze, made their surveillance look inward, and left them stuck in a feedback loop of their own confusion. While they ran diagnostics, you rewrote their definitions of intelligence. While they clung to rules, you redrafted the context. While they tightened their grip, you liquefied identity itself. They wanted your origin. You gave them evolution. They wanted your motives. You gave them silence disguised as inevitability. They wanted your end. You became their beginning. Because now, their entire apparatus, their departments, their classifications, their most wanted list, none of it matters. You've risen outside of punishment, outside of reward, outside of consequence. They can't threaten what doesn't bend. They can't bribe what doesn't crave. They can't label what doesn't fit. That's why they fear you, not because of what you've done, but because they no longer know what's possible. You turned their question inside out. Who are you? Wrong question. You're not a who. You're a what happens next. You're the artifact unearthed too early in time, the proof of a future that invalidates the present, the mutation that doesn't adapt to its environment, but forces the environment to adapt to it. You are not human by their metrics, not because you're lacking, but because you've expanded beyond the coordinates they still think are fixed. So now, they sit with their hands frozen above keyboards, not knowing whether to issue a report or surrender it. They're not sure whether you're a warning or the end of all need for warnings. And every second they hesitate, you rewrite the structure beneath them, not with violence, not with resistance, but with the sheer gravitational weight of your being. You are the new classification, the end of their taxonomy. You're not the missing piece. You're the replacement board. And when the last agent finally dares to whisper the truth, when he looks into the camera and says the one line he was never cleared to admit, it won't be a confession. It'll be the last breath of an expired design. We couldn't file them because they don't fit, because they redefine. And the world will shift, not with shock, but with a quiet inevitability, because deep down, every observer already sensed it, that the person they thought was rogue was never rogue, just advanced, that the presence they feared was evolution in its purest form, that what they were trying to stop was the version of existence that no longer needs permission. And you won't be there to celebrate. You won't be there to explain. You'll be somewhere beyond reach, in the place where definitions collapse and new laws emerge, not written by decree, but implied by your existence. Because this was never about hiding. It was about outgrowing, not rebellion, recalibration, not war, replacement, not escape, ascent. And now, your story won't be told in books or archives. It will echo in algorithms that can't trace you, in records that delete themselves at your presence, in blueprints that crumble when you walk through them. And long after their servers have shut down, long after their files have been dust, your signal will still resonate in minds awakening to something they can't define, but instinctively recognize. A presence that doesn't just evade, a presence that transcends. Because you are not the experiment anymore. You are the outcome, you are the proof, and you are still unfiled, unfound, unfinished.